Hey guys, thanks for coming. This is Dave, Regional Educator for L'Oreal Professional. Today what I'm going to be doing is walking you through an even more detailed example of my New York City blow dry. Doing Erica here. I'm going to get her prepped in a minute, but before that, I'm going to set her out of the way. I'm going to grab her. So what I've done is I've actually pre-sectioned her whole head, all right? So these are the sections that I actually take piece by piece. So all of these pieces broken down, okay? So they're broken down into quadrants, right? So you can see from the top view as well. Okay. So what I do is, first of all, you're going to pick a mohawk section, all right? And you're going to decide based off of where your guest parts. If your guest parts in the middle, then your mohawk goes right in the middle. If your guest parts on the right side, your mohawk shifts slightly over to the right. If your guest parts on the left side, you got it, the part's going to shift over to the left. And then that's where you're going to set that mohawk parting, and then the mohawk parting gets broken down into pieces that are no bigger than your brush. So as you can see, this first section, it's no thicker than the width of my brush. This section is no thicker than the width of my brush. Same for this one, all right? That way, you're completely in control of the hair. You are not doing any over direction whatsoever, and therefore you can actually control the hair quite like a haircut. You ended up needing to design the blow dry like you would a haircut, because you're gonna blow the hair where you want it to live. All right, so that's the first thing. Mohawk section, it does get broken off in my mind, so right during the execution process. I no longer pre-pin this way, but I certainly did when I was learning. All right, so it breaks down into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces on the top mohawk section. All right, and then you have, if you have a middle parting, then you're gonna have equal parts on either side. So then on my right side, I have one section on the bottom, because depending on the guest's, the depth of your guest's head, sometimes there'll be two. It depends on your guest. And then 2 sections above that. Turn it to the left side, same thing. 1 part on the bottom, 2 parts on the sides, all right? And then for the back, straight line down the back, you're gonna, same rule applies. Each section is no thicker than the width of your brush, all the way up. So you're gonna have rectangles, rectangles, and then you're actually gonna have a triangle section here. So these 2 sections are triangles, and I'll talk to those in 1 second. But basically, what these do is provide support for this section, which is gonna come over and above, and these are gonna help to prop up this section to give you the maximum volume at the back of your head. All right, so just wanted you to see the full sectioned out look of Erica here, just so you can get a glimpse as to, in my mind, right, and in your mind, this is what you're gonna break it down to. Now, when I actually go to start my blow dry, this is what she actually looks like. So I break it down, I followed similarly. I did the center mohawk, all right? I have a right side, I have a left side, and I have a back side, right? So one of the things that you'll notice is that the mohawk section does rock around just past the apex of the hair, the headline, right? And the reason why that is normally if we stop the parting here, this section of the hair just goes flat, and then we end up getting a divot in the hair. And what women want when they want a voluminous blow dry is they want lift and height. And so by just doing that simple rocking back slightly past the apex, you get, when you're doing this section of the blow dry, you get maximum lift. And then those 2 triangle sections in the back, right, these 2 triangle sections here, those act as a secondary support for this section to live and to rest on. And therefore, you're not going to get any divots in the hair, but you're actually building in a support system to hold the volume. What I usually do is I always start on my side, which is my hardest side. So we're all either righties or lefties, and that depends on either whether or not you're a righty or a lefty, or how you were taught. So some people are righties, but they were taught to blow dry left-handed, and vice versa. So I'm a righty. I was taught to blow dry righty, and so when I blow dry the right side, it's technically my hardest side, because in order for me to get the control of the brush, I actually need to flip my brush this way. So I'm actually going to be using the brush pointed up, which is a little bit more difficult. And then when you drop the brush to get your curl, you actually have to drop it this way and then roll it off, okay? Now, the left side for me is my easier side, and so my brush is actually going to be held this way. All right, and so what you'll notice though is I flip my dryer a lot, and I flip my dryer because I want to keep my wrist neutral, and we'll get into that more detailed when we get to actual drying. But I wanted you to see this is the approach and how I section my guests' hair before their actual blow dry. But in my mind, I know I have to break this down into this. I'm just not going to pre-pin it. Because when you pre-pin it this way, there's a lot of parting lines that you have to go back in and remove with either a carbon comb in your blow dryer, or a flat iron, or trying to incorporate curls that crisscross over partings. So it's not that it can't be done, it just is a little bit more difficult, and especially while you're learning, and especially on a mannequin. It's really hard to get out those parting lines. But again, this is how we're going to approach it today once I get Erica going. One of the other things that I wanted to talk to you guys today also about is brush size. Okay, so this may be obvious to some, or maybe new information to others, but the larger the brush, the less curl, more smooth. All right, so as you go smaller, you create more curl and even more curl. Right, so on the root section, when you're creating volume, I tend to upsize my brush, and then all of the pieces underneath it, I downsize my brush. So if I did this on my roots, this is going to be my mids and ends. If I did this on my roots, then this is going to be my mids and ends. All right, so just a little tutorial for you on that. So we got Erica here. She's just freshly wetted down. I'm going to be using my Techniart Transformers Lotion to Paste as my first application. This has a level 3 hold. It has a heat protection in it that's up to 450 degrees. It's a really great, it comes out as a lotion, but you can see as you manipulate it, it actually can thicken on you and actually can become more of a paste. So we're going to leave it more as a lotion for today. So I'm not really looking to build in texture, but I do want it for the heat protection, and I want it for the hold. But I want it for that level 3 hold, right? So if I were looking for something that had a little bit more hold, say I was doing prep for an updo, I may be more inclined to use something like a Volume Envy Extra with a level 5 hold. But for this, a level 3 is perfect for a round brush blow dry. Say that fast 3 times. All right. I am going to use a little bit of the gel to mousse as well. This is what I'm going to apply more on her roots. All right, so this actually comes out as a shaving cream like consistency, and then what you'll see is as you manipulate it, it will actually foam. So I'm just going to rub that in on her scalp area, right where I know I want her volume to be standing at attention, right? And we're going to show you how we get that as well. All right. Before I move on to the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to brush her out. I want the product to be worked through all of the hair evenly, and so therefore I'm just going to brush it through. Just using my wet brush, combing it through, just for a nice even application of product. Normally I want to get it about 80 to 85% dry. This way it gives me manageable hair to work with, but it's not over dried. I can still work with the hair and I'm not over drying that hair, like I said. So I'm just going to pre-dry her next, about 80 to 85% dry. I'm just going to take my blow dryer and pull the hair straight and smooth. What you're going to notice that I'm not doing a shaking action when I'm doing my drying. I'm actually following the direction of the hair. That helps to prevent frizz from being created. So I have high heat, high volume, all right? And I'm just going nice and smooth, going with the hair. That is how we are building in just a little bit of dryness, you know? We don't want it 100% dry. So again, I'm just taking the water out of the hair, just removing the moisture. I'm going with the hair. Remember, don't over dry the ends. Those are the hardest to control, and we want to make sure that those ends can be nice and smooth. I know, I get it. You're going to be tempted to go like this. It's a motion that we get used to behind the chair for quick drying. But I will tell you, if you learn how to pre-dry the hair, just following the hair, you'll get better blow dries that are less frizzy, and your guests will be happier overall. So next steps. I'm going to section her out, just like I did the mannequins before. So what I know about this particular mannequin head versus the other two that I showed you previously is that she actually does part on the side. So that means I am going to shift my mohawk over to the side slightly so that her parting, which is here, falls in the center of that mohawk section. So I'm going to do the part. I'm going to show you guys in a second up close what this first one looks like, so you can get a good look. Right, and you want to work neat. So you want to control the hair 100% because uncontrolled hair creates frizz. Right, so I am just doing a little knot. I'm going to secure it with one of my long duckbill clips. And there's her mohawk section. Okay, so just like I did before, it rocks back past the apex. This is going to give me that arc support when I do the blow dry from the back. And then, as you can see now, because we shifted the part over slightly to the left because she parts on the side, we have a light side and a heavy side. And so her heavy side is my hard side, and her light side is my easy side. I always find it's easier for me to always start on my harder side because I know I may have to work a little harder, a couple extra seconds, maybe another minute longer to get through this than I am this. I'm gonna power through it. The muscle memory here on my easy side is so quick. All right. So then we're going to, here I'll switch her to the side. Again, take your pointer finger on the point of your comb and just follow the line right down, right to the back of her ear. All right, so you're going for the mastoid process. And then we're gonna gather this hair, smooth that out, and work it into a Zulu knot. Somewhere recently I went to a training and they said if you always put the legs up on your clips, they tend to hold the hair better versus putting it down. It lets the hair loose. So ever since I learned that, legs up. All right, now we're gonna switch to the side. So you can see what I'm doing. Finger on my comb, dragging it right over to the mastoid process. I do need to adjust it just to clean it up a little bit, right? So I left some behind. There we go. So that's nice and clean. You want to have clean partings. Just like you do in anything else that we do, hair cutting, clean partings, applying color, clean partings. Right. Now this side, I told you, is where I'm going to start. So I'm not going to go crazy with pinning it or knotting it, because I'm going to come back to that one. And now, simply, I am going to gather up the back. Just up into one knot. All right, I want to get this hair out of the way, but I want to control it so I'm the one who's drying it. And I want to get these ends tucked. If we tuck the ends don't get hit by the blow dryer and become frizzy. And then you don't have to work as hard to break them into becoming smooth. All right, so now we're back to where I'm starting. Got my comb. So then I know I'm going to be using this brush to start. All right, so I'm going to say, all right, well, if I do that brush to start, she's essentially going to have two sections, just like the one I pre-parted. So I'm going to slice this nice and clean. And then I'm going to knot this, but I'm going to take these ends and control them over here. So if the ends are on the other side of the head, they're not going to get hit by the dryer, and they're not going to pre-dry. So one thing I am seeing about this mannequin head versus the one I pre-pinned is she's a little deeper, and so therefore I'm going to have to split this into two sections, because this whole piece is too wide. It's wider than the width of my brush, and therefore if I try to dry all of that together, I'm going to get over direction this way and this way, which is not what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and split this in half. Right, so I'm going to have a front and a back. And then just take this leftover and then tuck it somewhere or grab another clip. Just you want to keep it out of the way. So how we're going to start this is you're going to pick up your hair, the piece that you're going to dry, you're going to smooth it out with your brush. When looking at this piece now, you have a square, right? So there's a top, side, and a bottom. And so what we're going to do is dry the box. So we're going to root dry the box around all four sides. And what that's going to do is it's going to ensure that our roots are 100% dry before we move into the mids, and then finally before we move into the ends. All right, so zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, just like a balayage, but this is in terms of drying. So we're going to dry the box first, zone 1. Zone 2, mids. Right? Once zone 2 is dry, then we're going to work into the zone 3 and polish those ends, making those ends nice and smooth. Another thing, normally when we create volume, we think that we need to use our elbows and our shoulders and come up this way, when in reality, that's actually bad for our posture, it's bad for our shoulders, it's bad for our neck, and we want to be able to provide our guests with long-term services. Using body positioning, that is how we do that. So instead of pulling the hair up to create volume, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using over direction. So if I want the hair to go back, right, if we're blow drying this to hair that go back, then my brush is going to be on the back side of the hair, right? And so when I do my rock and roll action, I'm working to make the hair go back, okay? Now, if I am doing something where I am having this hair go towards her face, then my brush is going to go underneath the hair. And then I'm going to work the brush and bring it through this way and then release it that way. All right? So when we dry the box, the root straight out, we've already built in the volume at the root, and then the mids and ends is where we're basically forcing the direction of the hair. What we're going to do today is the blowout called Sleek and Smooth. And so what we're going to do is these lower pieces, so this whole lower section is going to be blow dried underneath towards the face, right? So ultimately this piece is going to arc in towards her face, and then everything else above it is going to go back. So let's get started. Again, high heat, high speed, everything on high. Take your brush, lock it into the hair, right? And then hair straight out, and you're going to dry the box. Right? And you're doing a scoop. Remember what I said about the shaking. We're not doing any shaking. All right. So now we're going to dry the front, and I'm scooping. Now I'm going to dry the back. All right. And finally, the underneath. So that's dry. And now, so what I know is that I'm going to be blow drying the hair brush under, and then I'm going to pull it towards her face. So what I'm going to do is take my brush, stick it under, I'm going to wrap this excess hair around the brush, and then I'm going to start working on my rocking and rolling this way. So back, lock it in again. Every time you unroll the brush, it slips down a little bit farther. And that's how you can tell if the hair is starting to dry or not. When the hair sticks as you're sliding the brush down, that means there's still moisture. And once the hair will go through the brush smoothly, it's 100% dry. All right? And so now we want to do is we want to build in the shape, which is what we were doing with that rock and roll motion. But one of the ways you can tell how curly it is when you do your flip, whether or not it curls back on the brush by itself now. All right. So now we're going to make sure those ends are nice and polished. So the ends are tucked under. So we're applying some direct heat to those. And now we're going to cool shot it. So cool shot, work it through, make it nice and shiny. Right. And this one, because we're going in towards the face, is going to be released like that. And we're going to repeat that on the section right behind it. And you're just going to merge them together. We did all that time to work the bend in, but we want to try and mitigate the parting that we created. So I'm just merging the two together. And so that's what that will look like. So the merge, you diminish the parting. The hair is nice and smooth. The ends are nice and smooth. The hair is going in towards the face. And then we're going to drop the next section, which is probably going to be able to be broken down into two sections. So we're going to have a front and a back. And again, take the back section, smooth it, move it out of the way. Now we're going to work on this front section. So like we did on the section underneath, we're going to dry this side, the back side, and the underneath. So it's another rectangle. It's another rectangle or a box. So it's more of a box here, more of a rectangle here, but same difference. We're going to dry zone 1, then zone 2, and finally zone 3. Now the difference on this section is that this section is going to now go away from the face. And so my brush positioning is going to now be on top of the hair with the hair wrapping around underneath. Okay. And instead of doing the over direction, again, up to create volume, I'm actually going to move my body position to be in front of her to create tension from being over-directed forward. And this is how that goes. So scooping, getting those roots dry. On a human, you got to be really fast with that. You don't want to pause and burn your guest's scalp. Okay. Brush on top. Now I'm doing this underneath section. All right. Now it's dry, it's nice and smooth. Brush goes on top of the hair. You can use this is your arrow in terms of where you're placing your brush. So you're going to be working towards the arrow. You're following the arrow. So my brush is going here and I'm just following the direction of that arrow. Use the tools that are built in for you. Right. So as I said, I'm going to move forward. My brush is going on base. I'm wrapping this hair around. My dryer, I can't get my dryer here comfortably. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flip my dryer. So I take my dryer and I flip it this way so that I can get under here without hurting my wrist. Right? Flap that around, and then you're doing your rock and roll here. And always go back to base again. You want to build more curl in. This particular blow dry that we're doing today is not super curly. It's smooth with movement, or sleek with movement. So her mids are dry. Now I'm just going to polish up her ends. I'm going to go back to base one last time. Get all that hair wrapped in there. And now I'm going to cool shot. Cool shot, cool shot, cool shot. And then now I'm going to flip my brush over, which allows me to release the hair backwards. Okay, so this one can tuck under here. And now you can start to see what the blow dry is going to look like. So she's going to have pieces that come around towards her face, and then she's going to have pieces that are going to wrap around those lower pieces that go away from her hair. So it just looks like she has a lot of movement, especially when she's walking. And we're going to repeat that. Dry the box. I'm going to come back, reposition myself in the front. I am going to use the guide. Right, because now I have another arrow here, here, and here. So I'm going to use that same arrow as my guide to know where my brush is going and what direction my hair is going. All right, so I'm just going to release them from the brush, but now together. So now I've merged the pieces on top, the pieces were merged underneath, and now you get an idea of what the blow dry is going to look like. So the underneath pieces are going to go forward. Same for the back section. And then every other piece is going to go curl back. This is also a great time to check in with your guests to find out if she wanted more curl than that or less. If she wanted less, you just change brush sizes to the next larger brush. There'll be less curl. If she wanted more curl, you can drop down a brush size and create more curl, or go back at the end with a curling iron and add more that way. Your choice. Next set, drop this. As I mentioned before, this side's lighter than this side, so I can actually manage this in two sections, just splitting them straight in half. All right. I'm still going to dry the box again, top of the box. See how the hair is being pulled straight out from the hair? Front of the box. Back of the box. And then underneath. So on this side, again, I have another arrow in which I'm going to follow. And then it's going to go under if I want it to go forward. And in this case, I want it to go forward. So we're going to go under the brush. We're going to tuck those ends. And then we're going to rock and roll. If you need to replace it on base, go ahead. A little resistant, so you know her ends are still a little on the dry, wet side. So just work that through until it goes smoothly. There we go. Back one more time. Full shot. All right. Now, with this side, I can just let this part go forward. Right. And then again, the same with the back. This mohawk section is going to go back like we did on this side. It's just thinner, so we didn't have multiple layers to go forward and back on this side. Now we're just going to merge those together, just like we did before. Just a little bit of warmth to help us merge at the top, and then we're going to full shot it. There we go. So that's the lower section of her blow dry. Alright, so these two sections go in towards her face. This section that was above is going to go away from her face. This mohawk section is also going away from her face. On the back side, when you look at this sectioning, these two pieces are going to be blow dried to her face as well. So these two pieces are going to get added to here for support and to eliminate the shadow or light coming from here. And then everything else is going to go back. She doesn't want higher hair to make her closer to heaven and just wants to live, here on earth with natural volume. Then I'm going to do it last, and I'll tackle my back first. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go that route just to be able to get through this a little quicker. All right, so back to this guy. So I'm going to break her back down into these 6 sections. So it's 2 squares or rectangles, so that's 4, 2, 4, and then 2 triangles. And I'll show you what I'm going to do different when I get to those triangles. All right, parting is key. I'm going to pin that out of the way. My ends are being tucked out. I have my split. And so I have this side, and I have this side. I'm still going to dry the box, but this hair brush is going underneath, and then we're going to be working the hair forward and releasing it forward. Same on the other side. So drying that box, giving her maximum root off the back. This is one of the areas of your guest's heads that people forget most to completely dry. It's the nape of the neck. And I will tell you that that is the first place where that excess moisture is going to wreak havoc on your entire blow dry. That moisture will refrizz that entire head of hair. Okay. So now the brush is underneath the hair, and I'm working out my rock and roll action. Right, I'm not looking for curl here, I'm looking for smooth. Moving forward, be a little bit smoother. I'm just going to cool shot it now. Moving on to the next side. I'm going to dry the box. Dry one side. Dry the next side. And underneath. Alright, again, brush is going underneath. Rocking and rolling to ultimately be released towards the face. Cool shot. Now from the side, you can see this hair we smooth and bent towards the face. This hair we smooth and bent towards the face. So all of this is supporting the underneath of her chin. Same goes for this side. So the back supports this part. All right. And now we're going to drop this. We're going to break this down into the next set of squares. That's pretty good. This top section, just by making that, you'll see how it becomes a triangle. Because you have a split line here, a diagonal line here, and a vertical, horizontal line here, so you are creating triangles. So we're just going to pin that up and out of the way. You can see where this needs to get split. And then repeat the drying of the box. Make sure we get all that wet hair. One little piece. All right. So again, we're going to dry the box. Dry the side. Dry the front. And dry the underneath. Again, we're going to follow this arrow, brush on top of the hair, dry our clip again. Back to base. Full shot. All right. Now to release this hair, I need to drop the brush handle again. So how do I do that? I loosen it, drop the brush, and release the hair. Now we're going to work on the triangles. So split that, take your clip, move one out of the way. You're going to work with the other one. Okay. Doesn't matter which. And so now we only have three sides to work with. So we have a side, a top, and bottom. So we're still going to dry those. The hair is straight out, side, top, bottom. Right. Brush goes on the top of the hair. The end, this point of the triangle becomes your arrow. You're going to flip your dryer again, and you're going to do your rock and roll. Over directing it to the side allows you to control to where the hair is going, but it's also preserving the volume that you created at the root. Full shot. Loosen and drop. going to go to the other side and just finish it. Again, like I did the merge of the other ones, I'll just work my fingers through and merge these pieces together. Okay. Lift them up, take these pieces. You want to keep these bottom ones going forward, and these are going back. Top section, just to finish her off. I'm going to let this front side down. She's cooled long enough. Again, we don't want it terribly curly. So here she is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the back and then work my way forward, and I think I can do that in 3 sections. So we'll do it this way so you can see a side view. I am going up to the next size brush for the top. Right, so I'm going from this to this. And I'm following the exact same thing I've done the entire time along. This is the only section right here that my elbows and shoulders will be going straight up. It's the only way to get the volume built into this particular place. So I'm going to dry the box. Dry in the front. Make sure she's 100% dry, and she is now. Brush goes underneath, hair gets touched. You want to control those ends, and then, like I said, this is the only place in this entire blow dry where our shoulders and our elbows are going to be overextended. Polishing up those ends, spool shot. And then release that hair. Now you're going to take the next section, again dropping this front hair out of the way, and repeat. So with this middle section and the front section, I'm going to change my body position, and I'm going to move into the front. So I'm drying my box, the back, the sides, and now moving to the front position. Drying the front. So in order to make maximum volume on this section and this front section without having to go straight up, what we're going to do is we're going to over direct forward, which is going to give us the same amount of volume, but it's going to be more neutral for us on our shoulders and our elbows. So brush goes behind the hair, wrap that hair around, dryer on, rock and roll. Back to base, rock and roll. Looking good. Looking good. Cool shot. Let it down. Now we're going to take the last front section and do the exact same thing. Drying the box, keeping our position in front, hairs being pulled straight out. That's how we're creating volume. Side. Other side. And front. Right, so I'm over-directing forward to keep that volume built in. Smooth those ends. One more time. Full shot. Normally what we would do is have the guests tilt their head back, right, and I just gently rake my hands through it. I want it to loosen up. I want it to find its own parting where it wants to part. Right? Push it forward, it's going to find where it wants to part. Now, the great thing about this is the amount of volume we created off the front of the face, maximum volume, beautiful arc, right? There's no flatness to it. And now we're just going to, manipulate it so that it works together as a unit. So normally what I do is I take all of those gorgeous top pieces into my hand, I gather them. Just not the lower ones, right? Those lower ones are going forward. Right, so we have this gathered. And then take it and gently twist it. Same on this side. Gather these pieces. Right, so these are the 3 top pieces. This did not have a lower piece underneath it. So these pieces become one over this piece. Right, so you have pieces that come into the face and everything else is coming around away from the face. One trick I learned from the blow dry bar and watching some of our artists is to tame these little flyaway hairs, spray it with a little spray, and tap it with your hand versus your hand. Get a little bit more control without actually flattening the whole head of hair. So, all right, there we go. All right, and there she is, Ellie with her sleek and smooth blow dry, using Techni Arts Transformers, lotion to paste, and gel to mousse. The lotion to paste, again, has 450 degrees of heat protection in it, so I don't have to worry about causing heat damage. I'm protecting her hair while I'm doing her blow dry styling, and I'm getting the volume from the gel to mousse up at the top as well. And her hair is light, full of life, full of movement. This blow dry is good for at least 3 days. Even in this Florida humidity, the only thing you could have done differently than I did would have been to use Serie Experience shampoo and conditioner on her, which builds in 48 hours of humidity resistance into it. So that's just another layer of ability to be able to build in time and longevity for your blow dry. I hope you had as much fun as I did, and drop in the comments of some additional tutorials that you'd love to see from me, and we'll try and see what we can do to make them happen. Thanks, and have an amazing day.